The floor is yours, good friend.
All right, hi everybody. Sometimes they say that the DOE works in mysterious ways, and oftentimes we're not really sure what that means. But for once, there's been definitely some super planned and thought out processes. Today is payroll day in the Career Pathways portal, so it only would make sense to ensure that anybody who's struggling with committing payroll today when it's due is here at today's training to get it done by 5 o'clock. So we will be walking through two aspects of the Career Pathways portal. One on how to commit payroll for wage-based hourly paid experiences, which are traditionally our internships. And then the other half, which many people may not have done thus far, but will definitely need to do in the coming future, is stipended experiences. Sometimes we call them workplace challenges. The state calls them industry-based projects. And the idea is that those things are paid a little bit differently, but the good news is the process is the same. So I'm going to throw up my screen here and we'll walk through it. But of course, as always, your support team is here to provide you with direction and resources to ensure that you can do this in a manner that's most optimized for you. So always feel free to reach out. In addition, should you have any questions, I invite you to definitely drop them in the chat. And at certain points, we'll of course stop for any types of questions. And this session is being recorded, so you can always refer back to it. But if you aren't somebody who's looking forward to reviewing a 30-minute video to scrub through information, the other great part is that all of the information you're going to see today is also located in our Career Pathway Portals Handbook, which is located directly on the login page of the Career Pathways Portal website itself for staff. And so when you're in the Career Pathways Portal Handbook, you can jump around to whatever particular page you need. All of the hours and stipends information are in just one section. And of course, if you're not somebody who wants to, walk through a pictured narrative description, but rather wordy walkthrough of how to do something in Career Pathways Portal, you can, of course, utilize the linked videos that are about 1 to 3 minutes long that will show you step by step, just like the narrative does, how to complete the work. This training for today will specifically cover these things that are here on the screen about how to use the hours and stipends tabs, because that's how payroll works. And all of the things that you may need to do will be covered in this section of the handbook. Now, when we are in the Career Pathways portal, you should see at the top of your screen in the navigation bar this hours tab and this stipends tab. If you do not see those navigational bars, it may mean that you need to reach out to folks like Desmond to get your access permission level updated to ensure that you can, in fact, process a student's payroll. Typically, this is reserved for work-based learning coordinators or program managers, should your school not have a work-based learning coordinator. But of course, the role of the person that would actually do the payroll would be based on your school's specific need. As a misconception check, you'll notice that I also have personally on my account this payroll button. This payroll button is for all of those advanced finance things like editing garnishes and calculating tax wages and fringe. You won't have that tab because it means something different in our system. Payroll in context for what we're doing today is what are the steps we need to do to actively pay kids, not all of that legalese and finance requirements. Now, before we jump into either one of the hours or stipends dashboards, there's just a few key facts that you need to know about payroll. In general, payroll follows a 2-week cycle. There are from time to time, usually at the beginning or end of the school year, one-offs where the pay cycle is just for 1 week. But typically payroll happens on a 2-week cadence, which means that when you're working on things, you approve time for both weeks in order to send it into the system. The second thing is there is a difference between hours and stipends. Hours are based on, an hourly wage that young people are paid at, the prevailing minimum wage rate of $15 an hour. And then stipends are more of like a bulk sum of money based on a pre-established like initiatives budget. And so Their process is slightly different, but effectively they're the same thing, but they do happen in separate panels. It may be determined that at your school, like your work-based learning coordinator might handle all the wage-based experiences, and there might be a better person suited in your school, like a community associate or program manager that's doing more of these stipended experiences. It doesn't particularly matter who's assigned to what, it just matters that everyone in your school is on the same page. And then the last key thing related to hours and stipends is that the Sims team and those around Desmond's sphere of influence are committed to helping you do this successfully. Payroll may take, a few tries to get it right, but these folks truly care about making sure our young people get money in their pockets, but also at the same time want to make sure that you're okay, like socio-emotionally. And so they'll of course point you towards things like the career pathways portal handbook and the videos, but if you really need their support or you really need just like a tutorial, like they're here, they're going to make sure that you feel confident in being able to process that on that weekly bi-weekly schedule. So let's dive into hours. Hours, of course, referring to experiences in the CPP platform that have to do with wage-based experiences paid by the hour. If we click on hours and go to the hours dashboard, you can see that there's all of the information, all of the steps you're going to need to be successful right here up front. And it's been ordered chronologically, so that way you really don't need to wonder, like, what do I need to do next? So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to begin with the first thing, and that is step one. Now, for the purposes of today's demonstration, I'm just going to pull up my school because, believe it or not, I haven't done my payroll yet today, but I need to. And so I'm going to show you all how I do it. So I've selected our school, and all of my CT-based initiatives that are paid through the Career Pathways portal will show up here. If I have non-CT pathway initiatives, I can also show them here. But for me, that means SWEF, the Supplemental Work-Based Learning Experience Fund. It means Grant Associates, the CTISP program, and other initiatives like that. So all of it's shared in one dashboard. Here I can see in my first line that I don't have any students that still need to put in their hours. So what we want to do is we want to train our youth to frequently log into the Career Pathways portal through the participant portal, their version of the site, and enter their hours on a weekly basis. Our typical protocol is, by end of day on Friday, unless they work on a Saturday. I also have on my calendar best practice for all of you, a reminder every single Monday on my calendar that says like, hey, hold up, it's time to do payroll. Because typically it closes that following Tuesday, and I always want to be on top of it. Now, if the student, for example, didn't put in their hours, I, as the staff member, can also go in and put the hours in for them. We want to step away from this a little bit. We want to make sure that that's not the norm, because as you build your internship program, you're going to have a lot of interns, and there is resources in the handbook to enable youth to successfully put in the hours on their own. So it's really interesting, when you ask a young person to read something or do something in class, like they might hesitate a little bit, but once they find out that what they need to do each week impacts their wallet, the tone just changes completely. However, we can see here, and this will be the same process as entering hours. I have a student who has entered their time, but let's say for argument's sake, they made a mistake. They forgot to enter a specific day or some form of hours. If I go ahead and jump into there, I can see that I have a particular student who has entered their time. I can see that, if I clicked on the hours button, I would be able to update those hours and indicate like, hey, you worked on Saturday too. So, let's pop those hours in. And it works very similar to how you would punch in time for anything else. You pick the date, you pick the start and end time, and the system calculates it for you. If, for example, though, we had a student on this list that doesn't have any hours. Maybe a student forgot to put in their time, or in this particular instance, this hypothetical scenario, a student didn't work. Maybe they had, a vacation period. Maybe they just weren't scheduled to work just yet. We need to mark that. So that way the system can go through their payroll and mark it as 0 hours of payment for this given week. You can do that from this window, but alternatively, you can also do it from the window of, hey, these students have no hours entered. We can see that based on my little widget right here. I have 4 students that are not receiving any hours of this week, the week of the 11th. And if we jump in, we can see like these 4 students didn't get paid because this one didn't, submit their timesheet. This one wasn't scheduled to work. And of course, working as best as I can with our young people, like I would want to fix that. But unfortunately, like if they miss the payroll deadline, like finance waits for no one. However, it doesn't mean that this can't be repaired later on. Other reasons for a missing hour can include things like, besides the missed deadline, if a timesheet wasn't uploaded, if the student withdrew or were terminated from their experience, or maybe it's possible that the experience hasn't started. Maybe you're a coordinator who's really on top of their stuff, and you always get young people enrolled in CPP way earlier than they start. You might be like, well, hold on a second, they haven't started yet. And it just shows that like you're building these processes to get ready for it. In addition to regular student pay, there may come times from time to time where a student previously either made a mistake on their timesheet or they didn't get paid. So let's say, for example, one of those students next week comes to me and says, hey, like I didn't get paid last week because I forgot to submit my timesheet. What I would be able to do is file an adjustment. This adjustment is going to essentially reach back into the system and say, hey, I want to update the details here. And so if I go to view adjustments, I'm able to create one based on my own given needs, given on the circumstance I have. So I'm in the wrong week, but in the adjustment section, what I would be able to do is add time like normal and then give a reason why. Because this is the first 2 weeks of payroll, I can't file an adjustment because there's nothing before this. But in the future, you'd be able to mark that. You do have to provide a reason for the adjustment. More often than not, it might be because a student forgot to submit documentation or hours, but it could also be for another reason. The only thing that we should be pretty clear on is that students shouldn't begin work in their experience until they're enrolled, which means they can't work and earn any hours because they have not yet been enrolled in the system by a member from the SIMS team. Students should not start working until they are enrolled. It protects us from a legal standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. You can't adjust prior to their start date. So we just want to make sure that we drive that really important caveat home when we do that. The last thing you would want to do in the hours process is process time. And we would do that by marking and approving the time. Now, you can do this as a school professional who has access to this dashboard, but it may also be necessary and more likely a better place for your host to do so. So here we can see that we have a bunch of students who have had their time approved. In some cases, this might be because Grant Associates has gone in and confirmed their time because they're in CTISP. Alternatively, you may have come in because a host has not yet been trained on how to do it. But in general, the recommendation is when you do that orientation for your internship hosts, show them how from the host portal, they can log in from their viewpoint, their perspective, see the timesheet, and then mark off yes or no that they should have the time approved. Ultimately, If everything works out well, kids put in their time, hosts mark off that the time is approved, you don't really have to do too much, but it may require some onboarding, some training and support to get people in the place that they need to be in. And then finally, for payroll, you have to commit the hours to the system. This is something that you have to do. No one else is going to do it for you when it comes to these hourly wages. In order to commit time, you have to ensure that all hours, whether they are, 1 to 15 hours or a missing reason for a 0 hour, have been confirmed by somebody in the system. And it has to be done for both weeks. This is coming back to that 2-week payroll cycle. So I can see that this is for the week of the 11th, but I have to do the same 5 steps for the week before. Now, I didn't have any students start last week. They all started the week after. And so there's nothing to do here. But this commit step will not show up until every single hour, every single student has had their time approved. And again, approved doesn't mean that they're going to get paid. Approved means that they've notated in the system as this is how many hours you will get, or this is the reason why you're getting no hours. Commit is the thing that the district, the Sims team is going to constantly remind you, hey, it's payroll day. This is due by 5 o'clock like today. And unless you click commit, students won't be paid. No one's going to get their money. However, when you do click commit, you can print out an automated report that shows you all of the students and their hours, but you do need to click the commit button twice, okay? You clicked it on the first page, but this is where you are finalizing it. This is what you need to do. It's going to double check you. It's going to make sure that you have made sure you've done all your checks and balances. Because once you click this button, there's no going back in general for a typical school. And so you want to make sure that students are getting an accurate accounting of their time. So I'm going to go ahead and commit mine. That means my payroll for my hourly based, my wage-based internships are done for these last 2 weeks. Information has been sent over to the processor. So that way, by the end of this week, early next week, money will be deposited to either a student's account or payroll card. But it's not immediate. Just because I just hit commit does not mean that kids are going to get money at 3:22 on November 15th at the moment we're recording this. No. There's a delay because we have to make sure every school and every experience has been committed before we confirm to the finance team, take the money, put it in kids' pockets. I'm going to pause there for a second, just checking for understanding any particular questions about the process for committing hourly based payroll. Right. Not seeing any questions in the chat. Anybody is welcome to unmute too. Otherwise, we'll move to stipends. You got it. So for our perspective, when it comes to stipends, the process is almost identical. What you need to do or what you need to accomplish is pretty much the same thing. If we look at my particular school, we'll see that I actually don't have any students to stipend. I already stipend the one kid last week for a program that they did. But the process works the same way. On the student's account, you would indicate whether the student receives the full stipend, part of the stipend, which is a 50% value. It's always going to be half of whatever they would be paid that week, or no stipend. And if a student is going to receive no stipend, just like the missing hours report, it will ask you, well, why isn't this kid being paid their stipend? You would then be asked to confirm it just like you did the hours. So, we have Carlos here as an example. We can see that his time has been approved. And you can see that because I committed it already, I already committed my stipends before this training, like everything's locked up. I can't do anything else, but I can still review it to make sure that everything's good to go. When it comes to the stipend approach, the only thing to notate is that when you set up a scholar experience for a stipended based opportunity, you will be asked how long said stipended experience is. And depending on your need, you might identify that the stipend is a one and done. So you're going to issue it at the end of the program, and I'm going to just do payroll for my stipends at the end of my workplace challenge. In other cases, you might choose to disperse parts of the stipend over a set of weeks, and that's okay too. That's how the system is built. And so you would need to come in every pay period and update that. As a reminder, though, if you're going to do the one and done method, where you're going to enroll kids, let's say in a 6-week workplace challenge, and you're choosing to pay them in the last week the whole amount, those other 5 weeks, you still need to come in and say, the reason why a kid is not being paid this pay period is because, and there'll be a drop-down option that says they're going to get the whole amount later. We really should attempt to pay kids on a regular, frequent cadence because they are doing the work. They might drop off, they might join late. And it's also a great incentive for youth to have money throughout the program instead of just the end. But based on your community need, you might decide that it really just makes sense to do it at the end. With that being said, just going to pause real quick, see if there's any clarifications around stipends, because then I'll show you some cute reports that can help you do this work even more efficiently. Okay, rounding out here with reports related to this particular training. The reports that will help you the most are going to be our hours report and our stipends report. These are going to give you some summative information on the details that you might find extremely valuable for what you need to do. Just before, when we were committing the hours, there was this report that you could have run in that moment that would list out, like, what did you mark for every student? That's not a one and done. Like, you don't lose that report if you don't run it in that moment of committing the hours or the stipends. You can generate that from here using the hours status or the stipend status report. This will give you an Excel spreadsheet or a PDF that lists out the kids for that pay period and how much they were paid. If you are working with a large group of students, for example, and you're like, why isn't that commit button showing up? You can, of course, run an hours not entered or stipend hours not entered report, and those will list any student that maybe has not had their time entered. Although there's that little section in step 1 that says, like, hey, these people need to put in their time, you might say, well, you know, a coworker of mine doesn't have access to that dashboard, so I'll give them this report every week or every 2 weeks, or I'll share it with the departmental team, such as the CT department or the English team, and say, like, hey, it's Monday, can you just remind your students that are on this list to go in and do their time? One of the big things that, you know, the district team keeps advising schools to do is make this a team effort. It's certainly helpful when other folks are in the know and want to really see young people shine, which most teachers do. And so this could be an alternative way of sharing information without giving too much access to other members on the team. The last report that I think is super helpful for, you know, reporting things like work-based learning time, the hours, right, are this hours summary report or the stipend summary report. It will give you a listing of students as one line and how many hours they've accrued for that experience specifically. Although this is listed in the Career Pathways portal on their activities tab, on their employability profile automatically when they have their payroll conducted, sometimes you might be wondering, or you might want to check in through your internship program, like, where are students at? How much of them have used the funds? Do I need to consider adding additional funding for their experience to extend it, give them more time in this work placement, if that's appropriate? It also is a good indicator or report for work-based learning coordinators and intermediaries that have to do site visits. That point in the internship experience or the workplace challenge where the program manager or coordinator checks in, they see how the student is coming along at that workplace, and they're documenting that. And it's also a great time for you to say like, oh, hey, they're at the halfway mark here. Like, let's remind my supervisors that they need to do these student evaluations based on the training plan. So, this could really help you operationalize things, especially if not all of your experiences are going to start and run the same length. If you're starting programs at the beginning of November and then you're launching a second cohort in December, those students are going to have varied timetables. It's going to be a different time in the calendar of when they need to submit those documents. And so this particular report can say like, hey, they're 40 hours through their 80-hour internship. This is a good place for you to reach out and say, all right, it's time for the evaluation. It's time for me to come and visit. So with that being said, happy to take any additional questions. But in general, those would be the steps to conduct payroll in the Career Pathways portal for both wage-based internship experiences that are paid hourly and stipended programs that are done from a project standpoint that are commonly referred to as workplace challenges. So I'll pause there for any clarifying questions. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Desmond and all of his amazingness.